partner with them on it and potentially partner with them on promoting it. Mike, was there anyone that I forgot?
Well, we have 3 months.
Right, 3 months, the tournaments, group memberships, and the first one, the promotional deal with the Fisher match. I think that's everything.
Yeah, that's perfect. There's some other categories, the architecture, promotional, like the $350,000
Right.
K-12, K-12 program,
The JGP or JTP program still exists, and also with those grandmasters, they're automatically given free membership with USCF. That's been standard operating practice for many years. So I think we've covered everything on the promotional memberships. Just a couple more things that I want to do here too. Another thing with the imaging and branding one, we've been working on, we've had the program for a while, but we've been working on finding something that we felt was appropriate for the benefactor members. One of the things that you get as being a benefactor member is periodic publication in Chess Life as a thank you. Also, the names appear on the website. But we really didn't have anything that we felt, we were looking for a while, and we felt good about saying this is someone who really come forward and supported US Chess. And the benefactor membership, if you're already a life member, it's $1,500 to become a benefactor member. Or if you're not a life member, it's $3,000, which gets you to become a life member and the benefactor member status. And we have a few people that have become benefactor members. I want to recognize those, and we now have something to present for those benefactor members. I'll mention those who aren't here, at least I don't believe are here right now. Jeffrey Davidson from California, David Cogman from New Hampshire, Edward Wyckoff from California, Joseph Boyle from Texas, Marvin Dean from Virginia, Christopher Lewis from Virginia, Parker Montgomery from Vermont, and Harold Torrance from Pennsylvania. But also we have 3 that are here, and we have our newest benefactor member here. The newest benefactor member, any of those that I just named off, if you're here and I didn't realize it, we have your plaque and your award. But I want to pull up the 3 that are here and also recognize the 4th and newest benefactor member, which we don't have this stuff because he just became a benefactor member yesterday or the day before, I believe. But our newest benefactor member, Mr. Jim Bedenbaugh. Thank you, sir. All right, one person that's been waiting for this for a while, our first benefactor member, Mr. Bill Goitsberg. So if I can get his better half to receive it for him, Mr. Phil Smith. Anyway, I could drone on and on. You're probably getting tired of listening to me talk, so, and we're starting to get some feedback. Gary's nodding. Anyway, thank you all for all of your support and all that you do for Chess and for the USCF. And thank you all to the staff for all your hard work in making this event and every day work for the USCF.
Thank you, Bill. I'd like us all to give Bill an extra hand of applause for his work on increasing our membership. This is really good news. Thank you. Thank you to the staff for support, Bill. Moving on the agenda, next is the report of Alan Priest, our Vice President of Finance.
Thank you, Madam President. This is my first time to make this report. And in the interest of time, I intend to be brief. Because we've already had a finance workshop at which we presented a significant amount of information and had the opportunity to have questions answered, I would like to point out a couple of things. You have had the opportunity to receive the audit report. Our audit was completed by the Knoxville, Tennessee CPA firm of Bible Harris Smith. This is now the third year that they've done our audit, and the USCF received an unqualified opinion. What an unqualified opinion means is it doesn't say that the financial statements are perfect. It says that there are no material differences such that one would draw any different conclusion about the financial position of the USCF from the printed statements. However, any of the items that they noted and suggested for adjustment, I believe that we made, there were only a handful of audit adjustments this year. There weren't very many. A couple of them were ones that they regularly give us numbers on anyway, so they were not significant by any means. A couple of key things about the financial results for the year ended May 31, 2012 was that while we had a budgeted surplus plan of just over $75,000, we missed it by a little bit, and we ended up with a surplus of $249,000. Yeah, that was good news. That came about from several things. One, our membership revenue was up over the budget fairly significantly, almost $60,000. And some planned expenses we were able to hold down. Some other planned expenses, quite frankly, were deferred a little bit again. So we had a really, really good year. That year generated a significant amount of cash, and that cash went to paying down debt. We had remaining costs that had not been paid from the prior litigation. Most of that had been held by, were just in payables to our attorneys. We also had borrowed against the line of credit. At this time, at the end of May of 2011, we had borrowed $200,000 on a $200,000 line of credit. We also had accounts payable of $121,000 and accrued expenses and other liabilities of $130,000. At 2012, our borrowings on the line of credit were zero. Our accounts payable had been reduced on the order of $55,000 down to $66,000 from $121,000, and our accrued expenses and other liabilities had been reduced to about $50,000. So we had paid off $300,000 in addition to making $35,000 worth of payments, principal payments on our mortgage. So with all of that, our cash position was planned to decrease, and it did. We went from having about $400,000 operating cash to having $250,000 in operating cash. but that was a planned decrease because we were paying down the line of credit. If you want to have the same amount of cash as we had last year, we just go out and max out the line of credit, we can do that. It doesn't seem any sense to pay interest on it when we don't need to. That line of credit is still in place, has been renewed at our bank in Crossville, Tennessee. Flipping over in the audit report, as I mentioned, the expenses we were able to keep pretty much in line. We were happy with that. The part I always look at when I look at audited financial statements as a CPA is I look at the cash flow statement, and I go back and look at footnotes. And there aren't new ones. There are not new items there. And everything that we have reported is consistent with the prior year. So I'm very pleased with how that has come out. And I hope that we are able to continue that as we move forward. Now, having said that, as we turn our thoughts to the budget for the year ending May of 2013, we will not replicate the results of 2012 unless we have something extraordinary happen. The reason why I say that is that in the year just ended, our tournament expenses were lower than they're going to be because this is an Olympiad year. Our support for our international tournaments this year will be we are projected to be about $175,000 over whatever sponsorship revenue we have for those events or fees that are charged to participants. The Olympiad is projected to cost the USCF on the order of $108,000, which will be coming up in Istanbul. The World Youth, $42,000. The World Junior, $10,000. The Pan Am Youth, $15,000. So that's a total of $175,000, of which, the whole Olympiad amount we did not have to deal with last year. So we already got to climb $110,000 hill to get back to it. We're not going to climb that much, I don't think. Our other expenses, by and large, are in pretty good shape. If you look at the budget that you have available to you, we're looking at just a small increase in membership revenues because we have a trend going there that if the trend continues, we'll do better than this. But we didn't want to be aggressive in that. Also, we have ratings fees were projected to be a little bit lower than they were in 2012. But I'd like to point out that ratings fees don't make a significant don't make the largest financial contribution to the USCF finances. Membership dues of roughly $1.7 million are the primary revenue source for the organization. Last year, our membership dues were $1.67 million, while our ratings fees were $143,000. So there have been proposals out there saying, well, to just cut membership dues and raise rating fees. Well, to do that, we'll have to raise rating fees significantly to come out anywhere close to even. And in the process of raising those, be able to keep the same amount of rated play. So the model that has developed for this organization is for it to be supported by membership dues. This budget does not contemplate any radical changes in that business model. Also, as we come into this budget, we contemplate paying off the rest of our legal fees from our lawsuits with our former EB members. Those have continued to be paid down during the current fiscal year, and the final payments of those should be made before the end of this month. So it's been a long, hard struggle, but we're about to complete paying for that mess. In this budget, our magazine printing expenses are down. That is because the contract expired, and with the current economics situation and with the rise of online distribution of materials, printers are out there looking for work. So Mr. Nana was negotiating a new printing contract, and a couple of the results of that you have already seen. On your table is the now full color version of Chess Life Online, and our printing costs which include your full color version, are actually less, over $3 3-year period, that contract will cost us something like $60,000 to $70,000 less than the current contract. And I would like to congratulate Mr. Nana for the negotiation of the contract. But we have some other costs that will increase. Our health insurance costs are skyrocketing. Health insurance costs, proposed premium increases over 30%. We have no idea how that will change with the current legislation which has been passed, which the Supreme Court recently upheld to revamp the healthcare system, but it isn't going to have an impact on us in the year ending 2013. It'll probably have very little impact on our rates from what they would be otherwise in the year ending 2014, because the stuff will kick in that next year. So we're dealing with a situation that's going to be in flux, but that is an area which has cost the organization a significant increase in this particular budget. We have a need. We have our people who bore the brunt of the hard times over the last 2 or 3 years. They have not received much in the way of increase in compensation. For several years they've been flat in their compensation, or some of them even decreased. And that is a situation that in the longer term is untenable. And so we're going to start seeing our existing team, we're going to need to support our existing team a little more strongly. And so you're going to start seeing that coming up. Further, we have added a team member in the form of Mr. McClellan, as Bill already referred to, and we have to support his efforts as our marketing director, so there's costs that are involved with that. And the EB approved that back in the May meeting. That is in the budget for this year as well. And then finally, an item that is not an expense item in the budget, but it certainly is a cash flow consideration, is that we have a significant need to refresh the technology that we use, not only in the office, but also in our the support of our online information, our rating system, and our website. We just have the need to do a lot of things there. We're not going to get all of those done in the next year. We can't afford to. But we're going to have to start chipping away at it. That is an area that has been deferred for several years, and we've reached the end of the line on certain things. The telephone system, for example, in the office has been running on an 8-year-old computer. And in dog years, an 8-year-old, computer years are like dog years, so an 8-year-old computer is like 90 in people years. So that's the first area that's been changed, and there are significant changes that still have to be made. Things that you hopefully won't see from the outside. If they're done well, they should flow pretty seamlessly. But behind the scenes, some substantial amounts of resources are going to have to be expended to do that. What's substantial? 6 figures? Not millions, but 100,000, yeah, somewhere north of that. Over time, we're not going to run out and do that tomorrow, but it's going to have to be done over the next year or two. That's lovely. Thank you for the musical accompaniment. I think that's 10 minutes, right? Finally, the other thing that we have that will be changing next year, in this fiscal year, not really changing, but that will be different from the prior year, is our National Scholastic events, solely because this is a Super National year. So the Super Nationals will be the first weekend in April in Nashville, Tennessee, at the Gaylord Opryland Hotel Complex. That will be every 4 years. We take our national junior high, high school, and elementary championships, bring them all together in one place, and this is the year for that. So it'll be one of the largest, if not the largest chess event in the world, and it's a phenomenal thing to see when we have 5,500 to 6,500 youth competing in a chess tournament all in the same place at the same time. By and large, financially, the Super Nationals generate about the same amount of money at the end of the day as the 3 events separately. The only difference is that if one of the three during the last year goes badly, hopefully another one makes it up. We kind of got all our eggs in one basket when we do the Super Nationals. For example, this last year in our Spring National Series, the junior high, which was held in San Diego, had a fairly low attendance. Came out financially okay, not great. But it was balanced by the fact that the high school was up significantly, which was up in Minneapolis, and made up for that decline, and that the elementary was maybe the second largest ever. I mean, it was way up there. So the elementary financially also made up for the decline in the junior high. So those events combined generally generate somewhere in the neighborhood of, counting the K-12, counting those 4 national events, those events generally have for the last several years generated in the order of $190,000 to $200,000 after direct expenses to support the rest of the organization. And so, those items we do have that factored in for this particular year at roughly that same level. That concludes my report on both last year and on the budget. You have those documents out there. If you haven't picked them up, you should. If you have questions about them at any time, you can always get a hold of me and feel free to ask questions. Our finance chair for the last year and perhaps the year going forward is Mr. Randy Bauer, and he certainly has some experience with this stuff. And then, of course, our CFO, Joe Nana, in the office across, so any of us would be certainly willing to answer questions about whatever information that we have available. So that concludes my report. Are there questions that you would have before we get into the approval of the budget? Yes, sir.
They have an injury from Virginia. Is that one question?
If you'd move to the microphone so we could all hear, then I don't have to repeat it into the microphone.
Andrew Ray from Virginia. I apologize if I had missed this. With regards to the revenues, you mentioned what we get from membership fees and from the ratings fees and memberships. Are there additional sources of revenues?
Indeed, there are. We have a commission that we receive on the book and equipment from our book and equipment vendor for the one that we have a contract with in the order of $130,000 a year. We also have revenue from the magazine, both from newsstand sales, which are fairly insignificant, advertising, indirect subscriptions, as well as TLAs, which are under the magazine revenue item that is on the order of around $170,000 year over year. I mentioned rating fees. One area that has increased fairly significantly is what we call mailing list. However, that's not mailing. That mailing list also includes email blasts. And the largest chunk of the increase in those fees is not coming from mailing and postcards anymore, but it's from the email blast system that was implemented a couple of years ago. We also do collect some fees related to fee day items, but largely those are pass-through fee day. Title fees and related things to that. But that pretty much just goes straight to fee day. Those are the primary sources and reliable sources of income for the Federation. We also have a couple of others which are on your budget sheet on the back page. I mentioned tournaments, which are on the back page of your budget. We also have a little bit of investment revenue. We have some royalties from the sale of our antiquated rule book. Sorry, that was an editorial comment, I guess. And we also have, from time to time, we have contributions or bequests that we receive. Those are ones that we cannot plan on, and so we don't budget for that line item because we just never know when that's going to come into play. So, and there is one thing. Hold on a second, please. There is one thing about this last year that's a little bit interesting. In miscellaneous income, we showed $42,000, of which $37,600 was a very odd item that will not be replicated. Back some years ago, the USCF had its insurance through a company that demutualized. And what that means is a mutual insurance company is owned by the people who have insurance there. And in the late 90s, early 2000s, a bunch of those companies decided they'd rather be owned by stockholders. And when that happens, then the insurance policyholders actually got stock. Well, the USCF, that long ago, got stock in an insurance company, but didn't know it. And after no contact with the USCF, that company is cheated its shares to the state, and there are companies that go out and hunt up that sort of thing and then contact you and say, for a fee, we'll tell you where you got some money. And the interesting thing is they don't tell you how much it is. This turned out to be a net recovery to the Federation of $37,616, which we received. But that's a one-time hit, so that's not budgeted into the next year either. And those are the sources, the total sources of revenue in the Federation. Are there any other questions? Well, the next item then on the agenda is ABM 12-06, which is that the motion that is presented by the Executive Board that the 2012-2013 budget as presented by the Vice President of Finance is adopted. And the Executive Board is making that motion.
Are there any objections? Hearing none, I move that this motion be accepted. Please raise your credential. Any no, not no votes. Any no votes? Thank you very much. Motion passes. Next on the agenda is the report of the Director of Publications, Daniel Lucas.
Excuse me for having my back to you, but that's the way this is set up. So this was a very dynamic year for the Publications Department. I'm calling it our Pinocchio year because Pinocchio always wanted to be a real boy. This is the year just like it became a real magazine. The reason I say that is because Just Life is now in full color. I've put a copy of the magazine at everybody's desk, so you should have one to refer to. So let me take a step back and tell you how we got there. As Alan has already detailed, we had a new printing contract this year. Typically signed a 3-year printing contract, and it came up for renewal this year. We decided to put it out for bid, despite the fact that Quad Graphics, our current printer, has been doing Just Life since April of 1980. The reality is that there are hungry printers out there looking for our business. I was being contacted on a regular basis throughout the year. I ended up selecting 6 printers, including Quad Graphics, and they all presented bids. Joe and I reduced it down to 3 bids. He worked very hard with them. Trust me, if you ever walk into a negotiation and Joe Nana is in the room, make sure he's on your side of the table. He is a very hard-nosed but fair negotiator, and as you can see, we ended up with $60,000 in savings over the next 3 years, and that's just a real credit to Joe and the hard work he did during this lengthy process we went through. Ultimately, we selected Quad Graphics. They did come up with the best deal for us. As part of that deal, Just Like the Kids, which has been being printed for the last 6 years in Crossville, Tennessee, by a local printer, it is now being printed under the same roof with